Are you tired of making decisions that don't reflect who you are or where you want to be? Life is busy and worry, stress, trying to keep up with the shoulds and need tos, and the constant pressure to please others just pulls you away from being you and doing you. Well, welcome to Coffee with the Universe with Lore Goldstein, a coming home to yourself. As a psychotherapist, professional psychic, spiritual teacher, influential speaker, and adventurer, we'll have fun and practical conversations around how to know and listen to the soul part of yourself. During this live call-in show, Lore will engage the real you with card pulls, share guidance from the universe, and help you let go of the past so you can make choices that reflect your greater purpose to be who you were created to be. Grab your favorite cup of joe, come sit down with Lore, and let's start the journey. Coffee with the Universe starts now.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Coffee with the Universe, where we have conversations around coming home to yourself, to who you are at soul level, and the peace within. This is a live call-in show, so if you'd like to speak to myself or to my guest, Joanna, today, or if you're watching on the Facebook page, please feel free to comment on Facebook or give us a call at 1-800-930-2819. We have a little bit of a change of format today. As you know, I've been experimenting with the show and I've had guests and then I did some by myself. And so today we're actually going to do part interview style with my wonderful guest. And then I'm going to finish up just kind of commenting and digging deeper maybe on some of the key points myself. So we have a little bit of change here and we're just going to kind of go with the flow. All right, today's show is about listening to your body. So when I first started doing traditional psychotherapy, I approached it from a cognitive behavioral point of view, because that's kind of what we were taught. You know, if you change your thoughts, you change your life, right? But I had clients that would present with anxiety and depression, which you would kind of expect in a psychotherapy environment. But a lot of them also had severe like body pain and illness, like unexplained back pain or like fibromyalgia. That was like a real popular one. So they were coming to solve like their midlife crisis problem or whatever it is they were coming to therapy for, but their body was also speaking loudly to them. And so I began to understand that when my clients couldn't communicate or weren't listening to their inner voice, their body took over and began to speak for them. So I do believe it's essential when you are trying to get unstuck from something or you're struggling, you really need to get whatever is in your mind, that gunk out of your mind, yes, but you also need to get that stuck energy out of your body so it's not sitting in there and festering. And as I was thinking about this topic, I'm like, who knows just as much or maybe more in a different way about this topic than I do. And that is my friend, Joanna, who is not just my friend, but she's also an amazing holistic nutritionist and practitioner. And I'm not going to try and do her justice by introducing her. I'm just going to let her introduce herself. So Joanna, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Lauren, hi everyone. I am Joanna Chodorowska, and I am a intuitive nutrition therapy coach. So I'm an inflammation expert. Recently I've become the expert on arthritis and this whole topic of the hidden emotions behind the body pain. My hip has been the hidden emotions from childhood, and really it's been a journey not just through the anti-inflammatory diet, but really listening to, okay, well, what does my body really need today? What does my body want me to do in this moment now? And it's really been a journey of listening to that. And that's what I do with my clients too, is not only do I do the nutrition part, because nutrition is such a huge foundation to one's health, but the emotional, the spiritual, the mental layers, those are all related to our overall health. And as the practitioner, I'm learning through my own experience how to help others through their experiences and really help them connect to who they are and what they're supposed to do for themselves. I don't give them advice. It's just really, like Lore said, kind of removing the layers, identifying where that energy is stifled, so that they can actually connect to their own inner wisdom that was stifled because of their childhood experiences.
I know a lot of people come to you because they are athletes and they're aware that they are experiencing pain, but it's amazing to me the amount of people who don't even consider like their body pain, that it is an extension of maybe childhood issues or like stuck emotions or repressed things. It's like that it's all separate. My body is separate. It's my mind that's having the problem.
Yeah, well, and most people come to me either for GI issues or for pain. I mean, those are the two biggest things. Some people come in for weight loss too, but it's really helping them to realize that, okay, first we'll work on that physical layer, because yes, an anti-inflammatory diet is definitely going to knock down the pain. But then it's really going through those layers that surface. And as the practitioner, it's like I listen to what the client says, and it's like, let's talk about that stressor. Tell me a little bit more about that pain and the things that happened around that pain. Like, give me a little bit of a scenario to paint the picture for me of what happened. And based on what they say, it's like, they'll talk about a fear or a stressor, and they don't even realize that they've got this stressor. And then we dive deeper to find out, where did that come from? And it always comes from childhood, or sometimes it's from a previous life, or hereditary imprints. So that we have these belief systems stuck into our mind, but it's also stuck into our tissues, as they say. Our issues are stuck in our tissues.
It's interesting. I mean, we've been friends for a long time now, meeting on LinkedIn. My gosh, out of like all the places to meet somebody, it was LinkedIn. I don't think I've like met anybody else.
I haven't either, not to this degree.
on LinkedIn. And it's interesting. I think we clicked because the work that we do comes from that same philosophy, but it's almost like the reason why our clients see us are reversed. Like, they come to you because they're experiencing body pain, and you start to make the emotional connection. They come to see me because, they're feeling like life is slipping away, and, what is meaningful in my life, and what about my goals? It's like they come for that emotional distress, and then we make connection to the body pain that they're experiencing.
Yeah. So we end up kind of getting to the same place, but yeah, mine are all usually, they have an idea that maybe there's something more than just the physical, but they really need, like, what? I said, I have to start taking care of me, and it's got to be this nutrition stuff. And every time I talk to them about, their health history or things that went on, I always ask about stress. And stress is always a trigger for the pain or the GI distress, or really almost any health issue. But it's really going deeper and helping them make that connection between, okay, maybe some of it is the food that you're eating, and an anti-inflammatory diet is definitely going to help. But until we address some of those other layers, you may not feel the full benefit of the physical things that you want to reverse.
Yeah, because it's all connected. And it was so interesting to see the facial expression of some of my clients. And this is when I was kind of transitioning into more of like the holistic psychotherapy. I would ask them about like their diet. Well, what are you eating? And they'd be like, well, what does that have to do with my trauma? Why are we talking about that? I'm here because I'm upset and I'm struggling. And why are you asking me about my diet? And it's like, well, you have to realize that it's all connected. And I'm to the point now where I believe that in order to successfully get to where you want to go, no matter like what your goal is, you have to work with the mind, the body, and the soul level piece. If you, otherwise you're like trying to complete a puzzle with only like a third of the pieces.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like you're missing some of the puzzle pieces, you know? And so that's part of what you and I do from slightly different angles. But yeah, if you're, I always tell people, it's like, if you're only working on the physical part, you're only getting partial healing. You're only going to get, you know, so far before the issues are going to resurface, because you didn't address the emotional component. You know, the emotional eating, that's all triggered by stress. But what's triggering the stress? And can we reframe that stress so it's not a stress? And can we give you permission to actually enjoy the food that you're choosing, even if it is a chocolate chip cookie?
Yeah.
You know, like, and that actually came up with a conversation with the client this weekend. You know, it's like, why something, I can't remember exactly the question, but my response was, because you didn't give yourself permission yet to enjoy it. And they were suddenly like, wow, okay. So this is like a mental, emotional component that I never even thought. I just thought it was, you know, me being stupid, you know, eating junk because it was easy.
Yeah, the first time that I started to make a connection between emotional health and physical body pain, and really, I mean, the body is like, it's super dense. And I feel like our body is our last resort communicator. Like when we're not listening to ourselves, when we're not, you know, heeding like
Listening
our
to
own
God,
warnings,
yeah.
like that voice within, our body is like, yo, what the F you doing?
Right, it's
I'm
kind of
gonna,
like
yeah,
all over the place, like trying to get your attention.
yes. So it's like, well, I'm just going to start giving you pain and suffering and things like that. And when I started to make this connection, because in my early psychotherapy days, I did a lot of trauma work. So I would get women who were usually in like domestic violence situations. And something that a lot of them had in common was chronic urinary tract infections or bladder issues. And there was this connection between, I am in this romantic sexual relationship with someone who is toxic and abusive, and I am suffering from bladder, like chronic bladder issues and UTIs, but I'm not making the connection. And what my work and your work does is it's like, okay, well, this is really like a second chakra. I use the chakras, so I'll talk about that.
I do that too.
Yeah, I know you do too, and you have some other tools which we'll get to. But it's like, okay, this is a second chakra issue. This is about your love, like romantic connection, but that's also where your reproductive organs live. You know, it's all connected. So
yeah,
when I started seeing that, it was like, oh, click, click. This is something. This is real.
yeah. And then a lot of times with that second chakra too, it's also, that's the creativity chakra. You know, it's about creativity and, you know, fertility of new ideas. So sometimes you just feel stuck in that one space. And yeah, bladder issues can also be GI microbiome imbalance as well. I mean, there's so many things that it can be. So it's interesting how we kind of work through the different layers, and I call it like the complex matrix of the physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental layers, because it's really complex. And, you know, I could come up with a program that would be like, okay, everybody's going to do this, this, and this. But the challenge is that everybody processes all those layers differently. And when it comes to nutrition, it's not calories in, calories out. It's not being on a specific, you know, protocol and saying, you must do this, and it's got to be to the T, and it's got to be exactly, you know, this many calories. You know what? It's more complicated than that. And it's really more intricate, because if you're not enjoying the food, if you're not actually slowing down to chew the food, if you're feeling belittled because, oh, I'm eating a salad and whoever you're with is, you know, eating normally, then you feel deprived. And so then you're going to process that that meal differently. And people don't realize that it's all these little layers that are all kind of included, and those emotional triggers lead to mental triggers, which lead to more disconnection and more isolation, and really isolated from who you are and feeling like you're alone and not supported.
Yeah, you certainly work with the food piece more extensively than I do. I mean, I definitely talk about the impact of sugar, sometimes dairy, like those inflammatory foods, soy, a lot of gluten, crap processed products. I talk about that on when it comes to anxiety, creating, problem sleeping, things like that, inflammation in the body. But you definitely go into that at a much deeper level. And there's a lot of psychology wrapped up in food. I mean, it's almost like you have to get over that hump, the thinking of, oh my God, if I never eat bread again, what will I ever eat? As if there's nothing else in the world. It's like you have to get over that hump before you can even then address some of the other more significant issues.
Yeah, well, when I had to give up wheat for the first time, I was working with a nutritionist, and I had adrenal exhaustion at the time, and my gut was a complete mess. My digestion was a mess. My whole life was a mess. And that nutritionist basically said, "I want you to go off of wheat," and just said that. Didn't give me any direction, and I literally starved for a week or two because I was like, "What do I eat?" So now when I work with clients, it's like, okay, let's go through what foods did you eat that are wheat, and let's find the appropriate alternatives so that you don't feel deprived, because deprivation is not the solution to helping you heal on all the levels. It's really just like, okay, so now I can't eat with everybody else, so now I'm going to feel even more alone. And then that triggers more emotional eating, and then it's just like this endless spiral. So it's really about giving more alternatives, and now there's so many more good tasting alternatives than what I had to deal with 20 years ago, where everything non-wheat tasted like cardboard.
This is true. Okay, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about, sometimes we just need to communicate directly with the body. We get a lot of fear, resistance, a lot of self-sabotaging tendencies, whether we're focusing on the emotional piece first or the body piece first. We all know we get in our own way. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And also, I'm going to ask Joanna to talk about some of the tools that she uses to help sort through those different layers and to help communicate with the body to maybe uncover things that her clients aren't making the connections to. This is a reminder, it is a live call-in show. If you want to talk to us, feel free to dial in 1-800-930-2819. Or if you're watching on Facebook and you'd like to ask your question through the chat, please do so. We will see you after the break. Hello and welcome back to Coffee with the Universe. We're talking about the physical body, how aches, pains, illness, things like anxiety, disease, cancer, it is really speaking to us. What?
GI distress.
Oh, GI distress. Yes, that too, is really speaking to us in a way that's kind of a bit of a wake-up call, because we aren't listening to ourselves. We aren't dealing with maybe repressed old emotions. There's something not right that we're not hearing. So our body is kicking in. And sometimes we do need to communicate directly with the body because, we may not make that connection, but also resistance pops up, fear, we get in our own way. Sometimes we're afraid of what needs to be done in order to solve the problem. So I'm going to ask Joanna to share some of the tools in her toolbox. And a lot of the reason why I think we're such good friends is because we do enjoy some of the same tools, like our Oracle and Tarot and the chakras. We were just having this conversation about appropriately pronouncing chakra. we use some of the same tools, but she has a couple different ones that she uses. So I'm just going to hand this over to Joanna, the second segment, and just let her share with you some of the fun things, because it is fun, that she uses to support her client. So share away.
Thank you. So I do have actually a lot, but I'm gonna kind of give you a client at a time and kind of give you a scenario of how I work with them. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a client that came in, and just intuitively, I know what questions to ask to kind of get to the underlying issue. So yeah, their clients give me their whole food logs and things like that. But in this one conversation, I had said something about, there's an issue with digestion, and immediately the client's like, I haven't digested life since I was 7. Okay. So it was kind of like, okay, I know that this is an issue, and I know that the client's also aware to a certain degree, but then they don't know how to get out of it, which is part of what we're trying to do. I did some of the nutrition response testing, which is really testing the energy of the body, and it was also her digestion there was off. And it turned out that the thing that was triggering it wasn't a food item. It wasn't a toxicity issue. It wasn't a heavy metal. It wasn't any kind of fungus, immune challenge, bacteria. It ended up being a scar that was never healed. And in her case, I was just saying, scars can be as simple as the umbilical cord. That's also considered a scar. But stress will actually reactivate a scar, so then it's not fully healed, and then the energy is not working the way it should be through the central nervous system. I mentioned this the scar thing, and she's like, just poured out this whole story about her C-sections and not being supported and something else and something, and it was the first time where she had that connection of, this is my physical issue, but emotionally, I have not been feeling supported by all these people, including myself. Now it's time for me to get that support, which is why I'm here. And a week later, she sends me an email just mentioning how as quickly as after that session, her digestion hasn't been an issue at all. No GI distress whatsoever, because we were able to identify what the underlying issue really was.
It's amazing how fast this process works. It's like, if you can properly diagnose what that underlying root cause is and like what it's connected to, and then you use all the funsies to resolve it. It's amazing how quickly that happens.
Yeah, and for some people like her, it happened bam like that, because she's also very intuitive and very aware. I have other clients that fight that intuition, so trying to help them get to that place. Like I have some clients that they're coming to me for anxiety and major GI distress. We did the stool analysis, yet sometimes it's a trigger that they don't know what the reason is. I know that they're disconnected from expressing themselves fully. I know intuitively that they've suppressed some aspects of themselves because of the divorce that their parents had gone through. And when we did the nutrition response testing for them, it was all liver issues, but liver isn't about, oh, you've got a problem with your liver. It's anger and rage. And that anger and rage was all because of the experiences and the emotional impact that she experienced during the divorce of her parents. So there's a part where I know that that's there, but I also know that they don't really feel that safe talking about their emotions as openly as you and I do.
Right.
Or like that one client that I just mentioned. So in those kinds of cases, I will use oracle cards, and I have literally like 20 decks. And I have some that are just these simple path to heal decks, and others that are oracle cards. And sometimes I'll just be like, I get that I have to pull a card. And the card that I just picked, maybe this is what we need, is fearlessness. I am fearless to follow my heart, and I release all painful defenses. Isn't that what you just were talking about? I release painful defenses while existing on my divinely lit path to enlightenment and joy. And a lot of times just pulling the card will start a conversation that they may not have recognized or realized that was pertinent to them.
Hello, Kat. Yeah, I talk about that.
The cat comes in just to kind of give you that emotional support.
Yeah, Giovanni always makes a presence when I'm on Zoom. What was I going to say? Oh, the card is a great, I almost feel like the resistance to looking at things is like a separate issue. You almost have to like get through that layer first. And if you can get through that resistance with a client, then the process is a lot quicker. I mean, it's a pretty, it can be resolved pretty quickly, but the cards are brilliant because it's like the card is speaking, and it worked wonders with my teenage clients too, because they'd be like, oh, the card said it wasn't me saying it. It wasn't a parent. It wasn't authority. It was like a card. Therefore it's like safe. So that cracks me. Like, I'll just pull a card.
And it also makes it fun, and so it's like, it makes it a little bit more playful because the cards, you and I know the cards never lie.
Mm-hmm.
So they really don't. And, some people are like, well, how can that be true? Like one client picks the fertility card and every single time, especially women, in over 40, and they've already had their kids, or, like you and I who aren't going to have them, to get the fertility, and you're like, and they said, no. It's about fertility of ideas. It's about that second chakra and that sexuality, and really putting the passion back into your activities. And doing things for yourself and leading from the heart. So sometimes those cards are just make it a lot more playful, and it helps to resonate better with the client and help them feel safe, like you said.
Mm-hmm. You talked about some kind of nutrition response testing. Did I use the right words there?
That's exactly what it's called, nutrition response testing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Applied kinesiology or muscle testing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just wanted you to explain that, because I don't think that many, at least in my experience, that many nutritionists use that. You go to a nutritionist and they're like, oh, you need to be eating low fat, no fat, high fiber, and they just kind of give you a meal plan. But we're all built differently, and just like different foods work for each of us in a different way. Like there's things that you can eat that I can't eat, and vice versa. So I feel like that's such a key component to your work in diagnosing things.
And just to make it clear, I don't actually diagnose anything. I just kind of like, if something comes up with the adrenals, then it's like, people get freaked out and they're like, oh my God, I got something with my adrenals. I'm like, no. There's just an energy imbalance going on. And then I can test some foods to see if the energy of these foods are going to help the situation, or do we need a supplement that works for it? So the nutrition response testing, basically I'm using your arm as a lever. It's an indicator of yes or no. And strong is usually a positive thing, and weak is meaning that the energy isn't supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just run through the whole body first to find out, where are the blocks of energy and which one's the priority. And then we work through identifying first off what's causing it. And sometimes, like I said, it's just stress. That, like, even today I worked on a client, and everything was good until we got to the kidneys. And then it turned out to be plastic. And usually it's like, okay, are you drinking water from plastic jars? Are you cooking in plastic containers or in the microwave? Those are usually, nobody's consuming plastic, on at least not consciously. But in order to get those plastic byproducts in the body, it's typically foods heated in plastic containers, either in the microwave. And it turns out he's like, you know, I've been drinking water, even the water that gets warm in the car, that's in the plastic bottle. And it's like, well, there is the issue. It's like, yeah, it's contributing to this something. And he said, yeah, I just recently started like having issues with, I'm going to the bathroom all the time. It's because the body's trying to clear this toxicity. And it's just as simple as, you know what, get a glass bottle, refill it with water, because if that glass bottle gets hot and the water gets hot, you've just got hot water. And it's not an issue if it's in a glass container. Or bring a cooler to keep it cool. That it's, you know, it's really fun to kind of use that as a tool. And it's really, and with supplements and foods, it's going through those foods and testing the energy of the food. Does it match the energy of you? And if it doesn't match and make you stronger, then it's going to make you weaker. And that is, you're looking, most everybody wants to feel better. So this is just one way to help you feel better, to match the foods with your body's energy.
I feel like that's very similar to kind of what I teach people, except I refer more to actions. Like when we take action and we make choices in our life that's out of alignment to our natural strengths, to who we are at soul level, to our values, things go wonky. You know, it's like a mismatch and all hell breaks loose on the inside. And it's interesting that food can also do that exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, and really all I'm doing is actually bringing awareness to what the issue may be. You know, sometimes people are totally unaware of how they're eating and how their body responds to the foods that they eat. And once I give them permission to actually enjoy the food and chew a little bit differently and actually set up the table so that they actually sit down and enjoy the meal, all of a sudden things that they were eating are like, I don't actually like this. My body just revolts. I never realized I was so stressed before that I didn't realize that I was choosing foods that were actually making me sick.
Yeah. And it's very insightful when you realize like what is out of alignment. And a lot of times I think we're taught that we should be pushing for something. Well, I should be eating this because it's a quote superfood. Well, I should be, working overtime because that's what it's going to take to be successful. We should ourselves, but then when we step back and look at what is not aligning to me, it's like, you know what, this never really did.
Yeah. And, a lot of what I do is really eliminating those food rules and, the rules of whoever. It's really helping you connect to the rules of your own body, and what it is that your body wants at that very moment. If you want a cheeseburger, enjoy the hell out of the cheeseburger. There should be no shame or guilt about eating a cheeseburger, especially if that's like one of your favorite foods on the planet, but, I shouldn't be eating that for, okay, why? And that's a lot of times I have to go into that conversation, like, why? Let's dive into that belief system, because that belief system is actually making that food something that's going to cause you to feel sick with. And it is going to cause some physical issue, whether it's body pain. And it could be like my client the other day, it could be the back pain where you don't feel supported because you're not actually supporting yourself in your own food choices.
Yeah. Wow.
Or you're not supporting yourself in actually enjoying your decisions.
Yeah. It's just such fascinating stuff. We could talk for hours on this, which we often do on our weekly or bi-weekly chats. But all right, so we're running out of time. We're about finishing up the little second segment here of the show. So can you, how can people, like if they want to reach out to you, how would they do that? Do you have anything to share with people? Please do tell.
I could share so many things, but easiest thing is go to www.nutritioninmotion.net. If it's not .net, you might get the Des Moines, Iowa, or New Hampshire location, or Canada. So nutritioninmotion.net. But I also have five steps to easing emotional triggers, which can be very helpful for a lot of people. And the link for that is tinyurl.com/e-trigger guide.
E-trigger guide, tinyurl.com
/e-trigger guide.
E-trigger.
Not plural.
Is that the same thing that pops up when people visit your website, Nutrition in Motion? Does it pop up there too? There's like a pop-up, or is that something different?
No, the pop-up that was the pop-up that comes up is to actually, you might get that one on that one too. I can't remember, but you also get an option on my website to schedule a 15-minute chat so we can talk about what it is that's going on with you and what your situation is, so that we can see, would nutrition be helpful? Would the Be Whole program be something that would benefit you, so that we can work on all those aspects to help you feel more whole, and as most of my clients, to help you feel better quickly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that mind-body connection and what your body is saying to you. So one last time, Joanna, throw out your URLs.
nutritioninmotion.net. And the emotional trigger guide is tinyurl.com/e-trigger guide.
All right, fantastic. Thanks. And I will see everybody after the break. Welcome back to Coffee with the Universe. Today, my guest Joanna and I, we just had a discussion about the connection between emotions and the body. A lot of times when we are experiencing physical pain, well, usually a lot of the times, most of the time, there is some kind of emotional component attached to it. Because as a human being, we are made up of our thoughts, our emotions, we're made up of physical matter, and all of these things are really in the same temple. They all live within the same body. Your thoughts don't live outside of you. Your emotions don't live outside of you. And also your soul self is in here as well. So when one area of your life is mucking up the system, then things go haywire and it starts to break down. It's kind of like a car that's never tended to or serviced starts to break down. And you never know what part or piece is going to fall apart. It's just going to happen because you aren't dealing with the car as a whole. You aren't maintaining it. So the body is the same way. And in this conversation, Joanna, she focuses first on the nutrition piece because she does work with that. That's why people come to her. They come to her for the nutrition, for the inflammation, for the, body pain. And if you're an athlete, that kind of hinders your performance. Whereas on my end, the people are usually coming from an emotion, from like a place of emotional duress, whether it's, a trauma that they experienced, or most recently, it's kind of like, life is fleeting away and I don't feel like I've accomplished the things that I want to accomplish, and time is running out and I'm kind of disappointed in myself and I'm looking for my greater purpose and I don't really know what that is. Oh, but meanwhile, I have like this incredible anxiety and wow, what is up with my gut? I have these constant knots in my stomach. And that is something that I was actually experiencing when I was on my own journey to kind of figuring out what is my purpose. Yeah, I have this career and I'm doing these things, but it just doesn't feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. And I was ignoring ignoring that a little bit. It's kind of like I knew what I wanted to do, but I had to make some really tough decisions in my life. So I was ignoring that inner nudge, that voice that's like, hey, you need to make some changes in your marriage. You need to make some changes in your career. And a lot of times that's scary. And we start to ignore those voices, what we're hearing from within. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I have like this stomach pain. Why do I have this stomach pain? And then you go to the doctor and you get diagnosed and it's like mystery stomach pain. Nobody knows why you're experiencing it, but hey, here's some medication you can take. And now you're taking medication to deal with the pain. Meanwhile, it's your body that's like, hey, dude or dudette, wake up. You're not listening. So I'm going to kind of shut you down by giving you this distress, this pain, this suffering in a way. Maybe you'll start listening. And when I decided that it was not okay anymore to have this tension in my gut, like at some point I was like, I'm going to get stomach cancer because my stomach is constantly in these knots. So once I gave myself permission to listen to my body and start to do things differently, that's when I started to feel better. Now, meanwhile, when we don't fix these things, there are consequences. I mean, I lived with the knots in my stomach, I would say for a good year. Yes, a year, like chronic anxiety and stomach knots for a year. So you can imagine like a year of those knots, like what it did to my gut health. And now, how long has it been? That's 2011. So we're talking like 8 years later. I'm still working on it and I'm definitely a lot better. And I don't have the constant knots, but it's just the whole point that when we ignore our voice and then we start to ignore our bodies, then our bodies start to deteriorate and it's a lot harder to come back from that. So it really behooves you to start to listen, A, to that inner voice, but B, if you are experiencing that body pain, what's going on? What is it telling you? And I love using the chakra system for this. Joanna and I talked a little bit about it. We both use it in our work. And I like it because it's simple enough for people to understand. I mean, I enjoy, Chinese medicine as well. And I've done acupuncture and things like that, but it can be very complicated to the average person. Whereas the chakra system can give you a clue as to what body part is hurting or is ailing and what organs that corresponds to, what emotions that corresponds to. So it gives you a little bit of a hint, a clue as to the direction to go. So when I'm working with clients, I am doing a full chakra analysis just to see what's imbalanced, because sometimes people will come and they'll be like, oh, I'm really struggling with, finding my purpose and, but I have these headaches. And it's like, I want to know, okay, what is really going on? What is that root cause? What is connected? So by doing this chakra analysis, I can look at the body as a whole, and it just gives us direction, a point of conversation. Also, the tarot cards are great for that as well. Pulling cards, what comes up. And by using these tools, it's just a much quicker way of figuring out the method behind the madness. And especially, when it comes to like stuck energy, and this is why in my programs, I also talk about yoga a lot, like in my morning magic program. One of the things I recommend that people do is a morning exercise stretching routine. And the reason is as I got more into my yoga practice, I realized that by understanding the chakra system, being aware of my emotions and my thoughts and my body, but also working with my body through movement, through pranayama, which is breathing exercises, through chanting and mantras and sound vibration. I found that by working with my body in that way actually helped me move through emotional distress a lot quicker. Same with tapping. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I also use tapping. It's also called emotional freedom technique. And that's also another tool that helps move the energy through the body. So when we're experiencing grief or sadness or loss or guilt, whatever it is, and we are working with the body through movement, through tapping, which is kind of like acupuncture, except you're just tapping on certain meridians on your face and chest and head. By using these, we're moving through things in a much quicker fashion because we're working with our system as a whole. So when we find ourselves misaligned, and I do believe that the number one reason why our body gets the way it does, whether it's an illness or just, some unexplained pain, is because we're making misaligned choices in our life. And our choices directly impact our physical health. And really, we're talking about what you are feeding your body. Are you giving your body enough rest? Are you living by your sense of values, your moral compass? Are you doing the things that you're called to do, that your soul is your spirit is saying, hey, this is your path? Or are you living by the shoulds, the ought tos, the what looks goods? All of those things create a path of struggle for you, which then impacts your body. Directly, it's, the food that you're putting in your body, the sleep, the rest that you're getting. But indirectly, it's, oh, I am living a life of shoulds. I feel like I should be, getting an advanced degree and going to med school, and I should be doing that. Meanwhile, your soul is screaming like, yeah, no, stop. We don't want to do that. That's not, our path here. And we're plowing through it. And then all of a sudden, it's like the body starts to feel that misalignment too. And so indirectly, it starts to really manifest, pain, disease, etc. Okay, so quick question from an online user. Do you work with people who have severe anxiety? I do not work with people with severe anxiety that might need pharmaceutical intervention. If this anxiety is preventing someone from being able to leave their home, then no. I mean, someone has to be functioning where when I make recommendations, they're actually able to follow through. So you would have to be able to determine that on your own. If I talked about the root cause and we did clearing work, would you be able to do what's needed to be done to make changes, or is the anxiety paralyzing you from that too? And I don't do medication management. So you'd really have to decide where you are on that spectrum. Okay. Wow, we're out of time already. It's like I get these little notes. Hey, you have 1 minute. It's like, I could talk about this stuff forever. Okay. So quickly wrap up. I probably have like 10 seconds now. Thank you so much for joining me today, Coffee with the Universe. And thank you, Joanna, for joining us as well. If you like more information about me, please head on over to loregoldstein.com. And I will see you next time. Coffee with the Universe on Transformation Talk Radio every third Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you next time.
You've been listening to Coffee with the Universe with Lore Goldstein. Thank you for taking a break and giving yourself this time in joining Lore for Coffee with the Universe. Knowing yourself and listening to your inner guidance are the first steps to creating more joy, fulfillment, abundance, and peace. Make sure to come back next time on transformationtalkradio.com to do more live card pulls, share tips, and ideas to help you let go of things that are no longer working so that you can truly be yourself. If you'd like more information or to set up a being doing guidance session with Lore, please visit loregoldstein.com. That's loregoldstein.com. Don't forget, next time, visit with Lore on transformationtalkradio.com.